Skanatani, good morning. It is just about 9 o'clock in the AM of Tuesday, the 6th of January 2026. I guess this is my first video of the new year. And we are, we just finished the new moon, or not the new moon, the full moon of Misabiko Gomiadotes, the long night's moon, which is our fourth winter moon this year. And me and the girls here are headed down into the coulee for our morning romp. They need to stretch their legs and all. And while we're down there, I plan to review this book, which is Thomas King's latest novel. Well, not exactly his latest novel. We'll get into that, but the latest novel that's been released, Aliens on the Moon, which I've borrowed from my local library and is now already a week late because this is one of the top reads. It was one you had to read within a month, and I didn't quite make it, so I got to go to the library after the coolies. But before that, let's review Aliens on the Moon and talk about Tom King and his recent Pretendian controversy and all of that stuff. All right, let's get into it. It's a little bit windy today, so I'm hoping that we won't have a lot of wind interference this morning. Right now I seem to be in a kind of a quiet spot. It's 2 degrees above zero, by the way. We're getting those western quote-unquote warm winds, though they don't feel warm. I'd rather have no wind, of course. In fact, I'd rather have no wind and maybe minus 10 to 20 degrees than to have it right around zero and windy. It was howling last night. Anyway, Tom King's Aliens on the Moon. So, the setup for this book is the aliens arriving, landing on the moon, and then you start being introduced to characters, and the book turns out to be very kind of Pulp Fiction-y in the sense of there are several different stories around individuals or small groups of people that you're going to follow through the first half of the book, and then in the second half of the book, some of these stories you start learning how they're intertwined, and some of the characters you've been introduced to start running into each other and this kind of thing. And so you have what did Jada Pinkett Smith call it? An entanglement. You have entanglements going on in the latter half of the book. Meanwhile, you're expecting something to happen with the aliens, because they take a shuttle, or some faction of the aliens take a shuttle from the moon down to Earth, and they land at Standoff. Tatsukitapi. Right here at home, where where you see my videos every day, although they're not in Standoff every day. Standoff is pretty much the capital town site of the Blood Reserve. So the aliens land on the Blood Reserve. The Bloods blockade the highway going through the reserve so that outsiders aren't coming in and getting involved with whatever is happening. And And, you know, throughout the book, you're kind of waiting to learn. The stories that you're reading are very kind of mundane, normal life stories, different people going about pretty usual things. You know, there's one section I remember having to push myself through because you're basically playing a game of golf with a few buddies, hey? And it's and it's long and not of any interest to me. I mean, there are some unusual things that happen. There's a chick who gets mad at her man for cheating on her, and decides to go on a rampage with a truck into a Walmart superstore or something, and is going to try to run him over at the coffee shop they were going to meet at or something. That was a bit crazy. You got a guy who attempts to rob another guy unsuccessfully because he's recognized right away, and he's using a starter pistol that isn't going to actually do any damage, and the guy who's getting robbed knows it. So you got a few, you know, little scenes that are unordinary, you know, but for the most part, it's just ordinary stories, fairly ordinary people, and you're kind of waiting to see, all right, how are these people's lives gonna drastically change when something goes on with the aliens. So you wait, and you wait, and you wait, and then you're into the last 40 or 50 pages, and maybe in the last 30 to 40. I don't know, but you're nearing the end of the book, and all of a sudden, the aliens just go away. Yeah, they were just decoration the whole time, apparently, and they just leave. And so to me, there was a kind of a, what would you call it? A disappointment, you know, is the easiest way to maybe refer to it. Got something going on in the forest behind me. Yeah, there was kind of a lack of conclusion to the whole thing, because the aliens, which you were expecting to have some kind of impact on these lives, just were a thing in the background, and we never learn what happened. We never learn why they go to standoff. You know, we do learn that a downed alien vehicle on the reserve is nothing but part of a grain silo or something being moved, or, you know. One of the characters, okay, for me, the highlights of the book were reading the familiar places, and he did have one Blackfoot character. And that's always, for me, been the highlight of reading a Tom King book. Not that I've read a lot of them. The only one that I remember really is is Medicine River. And I remember that book particularly for the scenes where he is encountering, where the protagonist is encountering people who I know or knew in actual life. Characters, for sure, from the Blood Reserve, almost all of whom are passed away, almost all the people that he mentioned in Medicine River. But But in any case, yeah, it was cool to read that back when that book came out, to have that familiarity. And that's what I liked about this book too. Even though most of it takes place in Ontario, there is a Blackfoot character who you know, speaks and thinks about familiar kind of places, at least. I have a suspicion that one of the characters he talks about from back home, who his main Blackfoot character is going to go visit, I have a suspicion who that individual is in real life. But anyway, yeah, that, you know, and he talks about Lethbridge in that book. And the thing I don't like about even that whole section, when it comes to the mentions of the Blood Reserve and Lethbridge and the characters here, the only part I don't like about that is that his Blackfoot well, first of all, the Blood Reserve is never called the Blood Reserve. It's never called the Kaena Reserve. You know, that's what I would expect from, like, if I was writing that book, I would have them landing on the Kaena Reserve. But they call it in the book the Blackfoot Reserve, which it's not called in real life. There is a Blackfoot Reserve. It's up by Calgary, but it's not here. It's not. This is the Kaena Reserve. And that might have been okay for, you know, most of the news reports on the aliens and that kind of thing, because it's outsiders reporting, really. But when his main Blackfoot character is referring to Standoff as the Blackfoot Reserve, I got an issue with that, because, you know, he's apparently from Guyana. He would know the vernacular, and that this is not referred to as the Blackfoot Reserve. But, you know, I suspect they use that term because Blackfoot is it's a more commonly known name. Guyana is really different than people are used to. It's not an English-sized name. If they called it the Blood Reserve, you know, blood might have too violent a connotation to it for the general audience. I have no fucking idea, but they called it the Blackfoot Reserve. These are minor things in the book, but for me, you know, reading from where he's talking about and knowing, you know, kind of a little bit about his background here when he was teaching at the University of Lethbridge in the Native Studies Department, and the people he was palling around with, some of whom became my in-laws and very good friends. Even my best friend was a friend of Tom King's. Yeah, that was always the fun part of the book for me. I wish the stories would have been somehow more memorable, and the characters, like, you know, I think there was too many characters, perhaps too many little subplots to keep an eye on. Morning. Yeah, I'm gonna come back to this because there's wind and peoples and stuff, so hold on. I really wanted to give this book some high review. I was hoping that I was missing something as I read it, and felt like I couldn't, you know, I didn't really find the stories or characters very engaging without the ornamentation of the aliens. Maybe that's why they're used in the story. I don't know. But without them, I would have found it difficult to stay really engaged. I probably would have put the book down, to tell you the truth, and just left it. And so, I don't know. I won't read it again. Wouldn't recommend it to anybody. It's well written. As far as writing goes, it's clean, easy to read. There's nothing. I got no beef with the manner in which it's written. Just that I don't think it did what that kind of writing is necessarily intended to do. Didn't really get you too engaged with any of these characters. I don't even remember a single character name. I don't think. Maybe one or two. But too many characters. Too mundane of activity. And then in the end, maybe less entanglements even than you'd expect. Entanglements that don't really, have any symbolic weight to them or anything. Like, nothing blows your hair back in this book, which is not just, doesn't say anything about Tom King's character, of course, or his quality as a writer or anything, but it's just like, it's not his best book. But I wanted to give it, great reviews. I wanted it to kind of blow my hair back at some point. And the reason for that is because he has been, recently, I think in early December, late November into early December, something like that, crucified. The native world crucified this guy after he took he's all his life claimed to be Cherokee, and but removed from his family. I guess he didn't know his dad, and he was told that his dad was Cherokee, and he himself, looks like he could be, phenotypically. And so as far as Tom knew, all his life, he believed he was Cherokee, but just dissociated by the history of his mom and dad and stuff from the community. But, he took on kind of that identity. I'm Cherokee, and believed it fully all his life. Considered himself an indigenous author. He taught at Native American Studies here at the University of Lethbridge, where he worked with and met some of my ex-in-laws and very good friends, as I mentioned, all of whom held Tom King in high regard. And I'm pretty sure, the couple of them that are still alive, if asked, would still consider Tom King to be their friend, and continue to hold him in high regard. He didn't know that he was not Cherokee. He took a DNA test late in 2025, like I'm saying, maybe in November, December, got his results, and he didn't have any Cherokee DNA or any indigenous North American DNA at all. And he came out and said this, gave the results to the public. Yeah, I'm shocked, but it's true. I'm not Cherokee, genetically. And and then the native world just online just railed the guy, just crucified him. So much hatred for a guy that was celebrated. If you took any indigenous studies at any post-secondary institution in Canada, at least, and probably a lot of places in the States, you would have read Medicine River, and more recently probably The Inconvenient Indian. You would have been studying Tom King. You know, you would have been excited to meet him on his book tour if he come through town, which he was supposed to come through here in December and had to cancel because apparently he has another book, a novel that was going to launch, and because of the controversy around his genetic identity, it's the launch has been at least postponed. Tom King is giving back his awards that he won as a indigenous author, not necessarily the awards that were given to him just for being a good fiction author, because he does have some of those too, but the ones that were indigenous specific, he's forfeiting. I've just watching this happen to him, and the hatred that is unleashed at him very innocently learning that he's not genetically Cherokee, although, like I say, his whole life, at least his adult life, he has been in the mix, and he's certainly, you know, been enculturated, you know, within that mix. That's why I like reading his books. There's a familiarity there, you know, as if it's a Blackfoot author, but it's not. He's never claimed to be, you know, but he's writing about stuff that he knows, so, you know, real experiences and people he can draw from. And they're, you know, it's legit. I would still consider it indigenous literature. But others won't now, because genetically he has been proven to be non-native. And okay, you know, even if you're going to take him out of the category of indigenous authors, which I don't think you should, but even if you did, then why the hate on top of that? He didn't know that he wasn't Cherokee. As far as he knew, he was Cherokee. So I feel bad for the guy. I do. I never met him. You know, there was a couple of occasions, I think, where he was passing through town, where he was going to maybe connect with one of my buddies. But yeah, I never made any connections with him or anything like that, or met him, or. But I know that people who I trusted, who were not racist, held him in high regard. And you know, so I wouldn't take that away from him for a DNA test. It has nothing to do with who you are as a person. You know, that's my thinking. But anyway, that's my review of the book too. Yeah, we'll see. I've committed myself to reading a book a month for 2026. At least one book a month. They might not all be fiction novels or anything, but I'm going to do a review of whatever it is I've read every month. So stay tuned for that if you like these book reviews. And yeah, that's Tom King's Aliens on the Moon.